morning, good evening for some of you guys, my friends across the pond or on the below the equator. You know I'm not good at geography, all right? This has been well established. Geography is not Jen Lu's forte. Hopefully, if the worst ever happens and I get an up close interview with a serial unaliver because I'm a potential victim, my life isn't dependent on a geography question because let me just tell you, I won't survive unless it's an easy one. I, yeah. So, good morning. How's everybody doing? Good evening. Cement shoes, laced in chains. Hey, how are you? Utter Amelia Sparkles. Good morning. Good morning. Before we get started, if you guys would all be so kind as to give your girl a thumbs up on the stream, I would appreciate it. Also, if you have anybody that you think would be interested in a little commentary while we watch this trial, share it out. Invite them on over. We're cool peeps. Not me so much, but the chat's cool. What can I tell you? Oh, okay. So the current situation at Casa Genlu is she's no longer a hurricane. Tropical Storm Nicole is pushing through. They're expecting the whole situation to be moved well out of my area and off to the north. She's a big old storm, y'all. By like the lunch hour. Okay. We've had a lot of flickering, but thankfully, good morning, Chloe Joe. Good to see ya. Hope the lights have been flickering. We've had power on and off, but knock on wood, it's gonna stay on for the stream. I was a little apprehensive, which is why I was a little bit late because it had flickered and gone off and stayed off for a little bit, and then it came back on like right before I was supposed to go live. And so I was like, well, let me just wait. So we'll just do the best that we can. It's mainly wind. It's very it's not a sustained wind, it's a gust. And what happens is the trees blow, obviously. Hello, it's wind. It's what wind does. It's Mother Nature. And I think a couple of them have like touched a power line, but so far, fingers crossed, legs crossed, cross all the things. We're going to be, it'll stay on. So, they have closed the Skyway Bridge, but they do that frequently. Obviously, it's necessary whenever the wind is too high because it is a bridge and it is a tall bridge. And I've been over it a few times. I get nervous going over bridges. I don't do well on bridges, but whatevs. Oops. I just grit my teeth and bear it, as it were. Let's see now. What are you doing, Jenlu? Pay attention. All right. All right. There we go. So last night I did a West Memphis 3 live with Amber's, with Amber of Amber's Alerts. I had a fantastic time, an absolutely fantastic time. I thought it was a great conversation, and I hope you guys did too. If you haven't seen that, check it out. Also, let's talk about what's ahead for today. Okay, so when we left yesterday morning, the prosecution was playing wiretaps from their 2018 intercept wiretaps that they had in the Wagner's vehicles. So they had them in like their personal vehicles, but they also had them in their work vehicle that Jake and George shared together, and they drove a semi truck. And so Oh, Chloe Joe, listen, I've seen some things, and I'm just gonna say it's been a lot, and I'm gonna leave it at that. So it's hard to get caught up when there's so much going on. But anyway, so some of the audio in the particularly in the vehicles is very, very. Oh, they also had wiretaps on their phones, their cell phones. So there were conversations played yesterday between Jake and his then wife, Beth Ann. She's now his ex-wife. Okay. Um, and those were difficult audios to listen to because, to be quite frank with you, they were newlyweds. And um, there was a lot of awkward silence between the two of them, number one. And number two, the actual conversations they were having were awkward. Um, Beth Ann lived with Jake, George, and Angela, and then Jake's daughter that he has with Hannah Mae Roden, Sophia, and also George's son that he has with Tabitha, um, also resided in the home. There were a lot of uncomfortable conversations because Angela Wagner, I don't know, and there's no nice way or tactful way for me to really say this. She's a triangulator. She is manipulative, and she was really paranoid. Okay, so the difference between paranoia and real fear is obviously paranoia is a fear that nothing is happening. Right? It's not. Um, there's nothing to be afraid of. What you're afraid of isn't currently happening, right? But then she had, which that really her paranoia revolved around her grandchildren being molested. So, good morning, Jennifer Bradford. Good to see you, Jen. Okay, so there was that because it wasn't happening. All right, to either one of. In fact, she actually accused Jake's. Good morning, Corky. She actually accused Jake's wife at the time, Beth Ann, of being inappropriate with both children. Okay, that caused a lot of uproar in the family because Beth Ann then could not be with the kids unsupervised, and the children apparently just really adored her, and they didn't understand what was going on. Okay, and so those were conversations we heard yesterday. Then and it made it awkward between Beth Ann and Jake because they were Jake and George were truck drivers, right? So everything that they were doing, they were gone all week, and then they would be home on the weekends. And so she was really left. It was really just her and Angela, and Angela was her paranoia about the grandchildren really ramped up after the rodents were murdered. Okay, and then the family was dysfunctional before any of this. Like, this is just the way their family was, just dysfunctional. They fought a lot, screamed a lot. Angela ran roughshod over everybody, except for Billy, which is her husband. I mean, there was some back and forth between the two of them, but when it came to her boys, she ran roughshod. And then, but because of the murders, right? The law enforcement put a lot of heat on that family. They were very well aware of the fact that they were being watched, very well, and investigated. The BCI made no bones about it. They didn't try to keep it. They tried to keep it on the DL in the beginning, but as we get closer to the time of arrest, which was November of 2018, the they weren't subtle about the heat they were placing on this family. One of the BCI agents, the head agent, Special Agent Schneider, said that he had created a Facebook account under an alt, or because a sock is your account. It's like a sock is different than an alt. right. So a sock is where, like, if you have Facebook, right, and you have two Facebooks, one for your friends and family, and one for like Facebook groups, because you it's better that way, because nobody will tell you this, but I will if you don't know. Facebook groups are where all the dirt happens. So it's better to have a sock account, but an alt account is an account that is not your name. It's completely made up, right? So he had an alt account and he was making Facebook posts in groups and stuff where he knew Angela Wagner would see it. So there was a lot of heat on this family. And to be quite frank with you, it um, basically erupted into this audio that was played yesterday at the end of court between Jake and um, George. And they got into this. I mean, they were driving a semi truck. Let's put that into perspective, right? And they are having this all out, no chill, screaming at the top of your lungs argument between the two. They are fighting. Where there are a couple of points where George tells Jake, "You've ruined my life. My life was going along just fine until you." There are no From what I could hear, the audio is not all that great, but we are gonna go over the audio tonight from yesterday afternoon. But when I was watching it live as it happened, there people in the law and crime chat were like, if you slow the audio down to 50%, you can hear better, right? So of course, if there that's a good suggestion. So here goes your girl trying it, and you can hear it better. So you can't hear everything, can't make out all the words. There's still some stuff that's just inaudible, but you can hear a good portion of it. You get the idea. So I didn't hear any direct admissions, okay? But there were definitely some implications uh between George and his brother, and it was a knockdown, drag out fight. I don't know, honestly, I quite honestly, as angry as they were, as loud as they were screaming, I don't understand how they didn't wreck, quite honestly. But they didn't, thankfully. Mostly thankfully. I'm saying thankfully because there are other people on the road and they're driving a semi. So there's that. But it's very, very powerful audio, and it doesn't. And everybody who's been following this trial, including myself, has remarked, I can't even tell you, I'm sure I'm at the 11 billion mark, how stoic George Wagner it has been throughout this trial. I have never seen a defendant be able to hold a face. I mean, this goes beyond RBF. Okay. This is, hey, Bethy Cakes. This is no expression at all, blank. And I've never seen a defendant be able to hold that blank, expressionless expression on their face for the number of consistent hours that George Washington Wagner the fourth is able to do. But yesterday, when they played that audio, you most definitely could see that he has a very explosive temper. Quiet people frequently do. That's why they say, be careful of the quiet ones. It's true. Um, so there was that. Now, today, there is going to be more um, audio. So we're going to hear probably um, some combination. If I have closed captioning on, it's hit or miss with the closed captioning. But what I will tell you is, I can differentiate the voices now. So if it's not clear who's speaking, I'll let you guys know for that. Also, yes, Utter, you're welcome, because let me say this. The way that people stalk other people, no, stalk's not the right word. Dig on people on Facebook isn't, you can have your Facebook profile as locked down as you want, right? have all of your photos private, have it set to friends only, all the things, right? You have your friends list even private. But what you can't have private are your profile picture and your wall picture, your background picture. And anybody that's liked it, that's how they find it. And that's how they find your family, because what your family will always like your pictures. That's what family does, right? That's how they find your family. That's why if you're going to participate in groups on Facebook, my suggestion is to create a sock account so that you have two, one that you use for Facebook groups and one that you use the for your friends and family, just to keep them safe. I have it because I don't want anybody from Facebook or YouTube contacting any of my family. And mainly it's for the people that might want to reach out to my family's protection. I mean, I raised my children, and that's all I'm going to say about that, So, because you always, I mean, I don't cross those bounds. Whatever is happening on YouTube, I keep to YouTube, right? I don't try to go into people's real lives. I don't really, it ain't that deep for me. But other people don't have that same line, and I'm cognizant of it, and I'm proactive. I know how social media works, and mainly because I've been burned by social media. It was a tough lesson to learn.
You'll recall at the end of the day yesterday, you were listening to some.
Why is closed captioning not working, please?
This morning, although the state has not rested its case, and therefore will have the opportunity to present additional evidence this morning, first thing, we are going to hear a defense witness call. And the state will have an opportunity to cross-examine that witness, just as the defense has had an opportunity to cross-examine state witnesses. And so is the defense ready to call its witness?
We are ready to call Jonathan Priest.
And is the state ready?
Yes, sir.
Why is the subtitles not working? Hold on, let me see. They're supposed to be on. I don't know what's happening here. Maybe they'll kick in a minute. Maybe because they just fixed the audio. I don't know, because before it was only one earbud or one side of my headphones.
Before you are seated, I'm going to ask you to raise your right
There we
hand.
go. Now it's
Swear
kicking
or
in.
affirm that the testimony you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer unto God.
I do.
See? And the defense may examine the witness.
Thank you, Judge. Sir, could you state your name for the record?
Sure. It's Jonathan W. Priest,
And I know you spell your first name a little different. Just tell me how you spell that.
Jonathan.
All right. And Mr. Priest, could you tell us how you are employed, or what is your occupation?
I'm a partner with Bevel Gardner and Associates. I'm a forensic analyst and instructor for them. I've been doing that for since 2008.
Okay. And as a forensic analyst, what does that mean? What do you do?
Basically, I look at evidence, cases, circumstances, situations, predominantly with crime scenes. Analyze those, reconstruct those.
And I believe you stated that's with Bevel Gardner and Associates?
Yes.
And where is that at?
Bevel Gardner and Associates, the primary office is in Norman, Oklahoma.
Okay. And could you tell me what your prior employment was that contributes to your employment there at Bevel and Gardner?
I was a police officer with the city and county in Denver, in Colorado.
Okay. How long were you a police officer there?
32 years.
And the highest ranking position you had?
I was the lieutenant commander. I actually ran the major crime section for the police department.
Okay.
No, I have no idea who this guy is as far as how he relates to this case. I don't know who. I don't understand. So I can't help. Sorry.
Speaking of a forensic analyst, you also have training in crime scene reconstruction?
Oh,
Yes, sir.
okay. I get it now.
And do you have any training in blood pattern analysis?
Bloodstain pattern analysis, yes, sir.
All right. Can you tell us what education you've had in that field?
Bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yeah.
I've got hundreds of hours of bloodstain pattern analysis training that I began in the 1980s, while I was with the Denver Police Department in training for analyzing bloodstains, which morphed into analyzing bloodstains in relationship to crime scenes and how it associates with crime scene reconstruction and analysis. I've taught hundreds of hours and thousands of people in the areas of bloodstain pattern analysis in probably 32 states, 4 countries. Been doing that for quite some time.
Okay. Can you tell me if you're involved in any professional organizations or have any memberships in any organizations in any of those fields? Forensic analyst or crime scene reconstruction?
Sure. I'm a member of the International Association for Identification, which is the IAI, the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts, which deals specifically with bloodstain patterns. The Association for Crime Scene Reconstruction, where I was also a board member, the president, and the chairman of the board for a number of years. Those are the primary organizations that I belong to.
All right. And how long have you been certified as a specialist in any of those fields?
I'm certified in bloodstain pattern analysis through the IAI. I got my certification back in 2011, maybe 2010.
And have you ever testified as an expert in state court or federal court in those fields?
Many times.
And could you tell me some of the states, if any, that you have testified in?
California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Montana, Idaho, Wisconsin, Tennessee, Virginia, Florida, Georgia, New York, New Jersey.
Could you approximate how many times your testimony has been given as an expert in all of those fields?
Oh, hundreds.
And typically, what can you tell me if there's a percentage, how often that you would testify for either the prosecution or the state of any government or defense?
Overall, it's probably about 60-40 prosecution.
Okay, 60% for prosecution.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to show you what has been previously marked as Defense Exhibit 51.
I do.
Okay, and what is that document?
That is my curriculum vitae.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, we would move to admit Mr. Priest as an expert in the field of crime scene reconstruction and forensic analysis of evidence.
And objections.
No, I actually like the here.
I'm sorry.
I like the here. Okay. Mr. Reese, do you have a degree?
No.
And these days, a lot of organizations a lot of bureaus of criminal investigation, a lot of folks engaged in crime scene analysis, they actually require a degree before you can get hired by them, correct?
I know that there are, you're talking about law enforcement agencies?
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking state, federal.
I would say there are organizations, there are law enforcement entities that require a degree.
Right. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the training, like National Forensics Academy and some of those organizations are starting to require degrees as a prerequisite to attending or graduating their training. Isn't that correct?
I wouldn't characterize it as a lot, but there are some.
Okay. And the crux of your experience in this profession, the majority of your profession in law enforcement, was actually just working for a city police department, correct?
Correct.
And that was the city of Denver, correct?
Yes.
You never worked for a state bureau of criminal investigation, right?
Well, what do you mean by worked for? Was I actually an employee of the organization?
Correct.
No, but I've done work for state organizations in the areas of law enforcement and federal organizations.
But you were never actually employed,
I wasn't employed.
where that was your job 24/7.
Right.
Where you had to basically attend their continuing education and adhere full-time as an employee to their policies.
That's fair.
And you never actually worked in a lab full-time.
Full-time? No.
And you're not a tool mark examiner, firearms examiner, you never had that job full-time, correct?
Correct.
And you've never been a full-time trace evidence examiner, working in a lab, correct?
Correct.
The member organizations that you talked about, again, for the most part, as long as you are employed in this profession, in good standing, you can apply, pay a fee, and become a member of one of those organizations. Is that correct?
That's true.
And you spend some time in there, and if you're active in that organization, then eventually you make your way and you can be president or something like that, correct?
Sure.
You're not going to approach.
So I would imagine what's going on here, because he is giving him a oh gosh, what is it called? I keep wanting to say cinema verite, but obviously that is not correct. He's giving him the voir dire, which is the state, or whichever side, in this case it's the state, questioning the witness to decide whether or not they believe that this witness is qualified as an expert witness. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like the state is going to say, look, he doesn't have what the credentials, or we don't think he qualifies to be considered a expert witness. That's what I think they're doing, but gonna do.
Witness as an expert in crime scene analysis and bloodstain pattern.
Well, there you go.
Thank you. Sir, are you aware, or have you been provided material regarding an 8-person homicide in Pike County?
Yes.
And could you tell me what material you have reviewed in regard to that case?
Thousands of pages of written materials, photographs, video, laboratory reports.
In regard to those photos or video, were any of those the scenes of crime scenes?
Yes.
And did you review any interviews?
Yes.
And who were those interviews of?
Well, there were a number of individuals. I'm really bad with recalling names. The one that I remember most prevalently is Jake Wagner.
Okay, thank you. And you were asked to examine those crime scenes and prepare a report in regard to your findings or your opinion. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. I'm now going to provide you with the previously marked as Exhibit 52. Take a look at Exhibit 52. tell me if you recognize that.
I do.
All right, and what is that document?
That's a draft of my analysis report.
Okay, and so I'm going to ask you questions about the report, that exhibit there that I just provided you, and feel free to look at that if you need in regard to any questions that I'm about to ask. The first thing I want to ask you about is, are you familiar with the scene, which we call scene 1, or the residence of Christopher Roden Sr.?
Yes.
All right. And specifically, I would like to ask you about the decisions or opinions that you have regarding the movement of, well, did you observe blood at that scene?
Yes.
And where was that blood at?
Mostly on the floor. There were some other objects that had what appeared to be blood stains on them, on the two bodies that were in the scene.
Okay. And one of the specific questions that we asked of you was to determine how many people, if you could come to an opinion, how many people had perpetrated that offense or were present at that location. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
And were you able to arrive at an opinion regarding that?
Yes.
Okay, before we get to that, I'd like to redirect you back to that crime scene. What can you tell us about, and relying upon your training and experience and blood pattern analysis, what can you tell us about the blood that is on that floor? Let me find an exhibit. All right, sir, without handing me what has been previously identified as State's Exhibit A221, A214, A213, A184, A181, and A168, could you take a look at those? And tell me if you recognize those photos.
I do.
All right, and have you seen those photos before?
I have.
All right, and can you identify, if you recall, where those photos are taken at what location?
These are at what is being designated as the first scene, 4077. I believe that's it. I can't recall the street.
Okay, and in regard to the blood there on the floor, what can you tell me about how that was deposited? What information does your training experience tell us about that?
No, it's a volume stain, meaning that there's a lot of blood, likely from a replenishing source, meaning that blood is continually added to the area from the blood source. There are what is primarily described as motion stains, which in this particular setting, we have both wipes and swipes. A wipe pattern is one where pre-existing blood has motion that goes through it. So say, for example, you have paint on a floor, and you take your hand or a brush, and you just move through that liquid paint that creates a wipe pattern. A swipe pattern is where now we just have a brush with paint on it, and then we touch a non-bloody surface that creates what's known as a swipe. And that's basically what we're seeing here is we have this blood, both pre-existing and existing, creating those wipe and swipe patterns. Those are the predominant stains that we see. And then those have a primary category or a parent category of what's called a smear. And that's one, I can't quite tell if it's a wipe or a swipe, so we're going to identify that as a smear.
Okay. And can you tell me anything about how, in your training experience, how those smears would have been left there on that floor?
Well, again, it's something is moving through that blood. It can be an object that is moving through the pre-existing blood. It could be the blood source itself, the actual thing that has the blood on it. In this particular case, we know we have two bodies that are bleeding from open wounds. Those can easily be the source of creating these stains, and certainly the patterns that we see here are consistent with that.
Okay. And in one of those photos, let me look at it, there's a circular pattern in the floor. I'm going to specifically direct you to exhibit 213 and 221. I see a round stain, and it appears to be darker or a heavier accumulation. Can you tell me why that is?
Well, basically, we have a looped stain here. You can see where there is a superior drag that goes through, or a wipe that goes over the top of a pre-existing wipe. So that tells us that we have this circular looping motion. So we have a degree of sequencing with this particular area. A number of things can occur here. We can have a blood source that has moved through this area in the circular motion. We can have pre-existing blood here, and then something else has moved through that pre-existing blood stain.
Okay. And the order, tell me this, can we tell the order in which things would be on the floor in light of, say, a rug or a carpet? I'm going to refer you to exhibits 214, 184, and 168. If you could take a look at those. So I see the blood smears that you're talking about, but I see some other objects like a rug or blanket carpet. I'm not sure what that is. Could you tell me how that is that carpet does not have the blood on the top side, such as the floor?
I'm not quite sure I understand that question.
Can you tell me whether those carpets were there or rugs were there? What role did they play with the smear in the floor?
I didn't
Well, the rugs
understand that question
got-
either.
It appears, because I don't have any
There you go.
photographs of the blood stains with the rugs removed.
Right.
So I really can't see under the rugs. However, looking at the wipes that we see here, it appears that they are beneath the rug, telling me that the wipes pre-existed the position of the rug. In addition to that, the rug is turned over. There's some sort of transfer mark on the backing side of the rug, at least in one location. And it appears that there is saturation associated with that doesn't have an identifiable source to it. So that rug was in a different position when blood was deposited on the rug. And then the rug appears to have been moved after the swipe was, or the wipe was created.
All right. And speaking of things that were moved or placed afterward, is there anything you can tell me about this recliner that is noted in A220?
Yes.
And what conclusion can be drawn from comparing the position of the recliner in the floor with the blood smear?
Well, there's a swipe stain that I'm going to back up and call it a smear because I can't see the area under the chair in this photograph. that pre-existed the chair being placed in this location. So the chair's been moved after the blood stain was created.
Okay, all right. Now, I want to direct your attention to the actual injuries. Did you see photos or are you aware of the bodies that were found in that residence?
Yes.
And can you tell me the injuries or the locations of the gunshot wounds?
Well, but with one of the decedents, they were primarily to the head and face area. With another decedent, he also had head injuries, but he had a fairly egregious arm injury.
All right. And you were able to determine, based on your training experience, what likely caused that arm injury, is that right?
Yes.
And that would be what type of rounds or ammunition?
The arm injury was likely created by a high-powered round, knowledge that there was a SKS or in 7.62 by 3.9 caliber that was present that easily could have created the injury to the arm.
Okay. And I believe you noted in your report the type of ammunition or the type of firearms that were used at that residence. Do you recall? If not, I believe you've got it in your report.
The types of firearms that were used here.
Yes, at 4777 Union Road.
Right, the two different calibers, the 7.62 by 3.9, which was associated with an SKS rifle,
Okay.
and a 40 caliber handgun was the second.
Okay. And if you recall from, I believe that you had told me that you had listened to a statement of Jake Wagner, is that right?
Correct.
All right. Did he ever give a description of the firearm, the 40 caliber, a make or model brand?
Well, I know it was a Glock. Whether he actually said that or not.
I don't know if my
Yeah.
microphone is picking up the wind, but it's whistling.
And
It's
was there
loud
anything
to me.
about the
That's why I'm
ammunition that was
muting,
used
just so you guys know.
That you could determine from shell casings that were found at the scene?
But the fired cartridge cases were Hornady brand. The projectiles that were covered are consistent with either the Hornady critical duty or the critical defense. They're basically the same ammunition, but the critical duty is loaded with a higher level of powder.
Okay. And as far as the body, so we saw the blood smear. Could you tell me where the bodies were found at 4770 Union Road?
They were in a bedroom towards the back of what I'm calling the back of the.
Right. And was there, if you recall, and I can find a photograph for you, do you recall the condition or whether the clothing, or how they appeared, I should say, in that room?
Well, they appeared as if they'd been dragged by the feet.
Okay. And did you have an order in which, in your opinion, that those bodies were placed in that room?
The first body into the room was likely Gary. Roden, I believe is the last name, and the second one was Chris.
Okay. So I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit A447, States Exhibit A447. Could you take a look at that? Do you recognize that photo?
I do.
All right. And what would that photo be on?
This is of the two decedents in the bedroom.
Okay. And it appears that one or both are covered. What is that? Can you tell me?
It looks like a bed comforter, like the top
Okay.
cover of a bed.
And based on your training and experience, what does that tell you when there's a cover?
Well, it's not unusual in death scenes to see individuals who are covered up with some object. You see it a lot in efforts to hide or depersonalize a particular scene.
Okay. All right. Now, we're going to come back to this. But before I do, what type of residence is 4077? Is this a house, a mobile home?
I imagine it could be made to be mobile, but it's primarily what appears to be a stationary residence.
Okay, all right. And let me now move your attention to what has been called crime scene 3. This would be the location of Dana Roden. Are you familiar with
again, recalling the names, is this the location with 3 decedents or 2?
Three.
3, then you're saying.
Okay. And do you recall who those 3 decedents were at that residence?
Dana was one, I believe another one was Chris Jr. And I don't recall off the top of my head the name of the third individual.
Okay. What can you tell me about the manner of death or of those 3 individuals at that location?
Gunshot wound.
All right. And where was the placement of those gunshot wounds? Where on the body?
Primarily to the head and face area.
Okay. And speaking of Dana, do you recall how she appeared or how the photographs that were provided to you, how they appeared on her body? You know, was she covered with anything?
I know she had been moved some. I'd have to look at the photos again too.
Going to give you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit 298 and 299. Let me know if you recognize those photos.
I do.
All right. And what can you tell me about those photos that I just provided?
I have 2 photos. One, there is what appears to be a comforter over the top of the body, and the second one is with the comforter removed.
Okay, all right. And in your report, did you provide an opinion regarding a pillow? Now, in that picture, it appears to be a pillow over top of Dana's face. Do you see that?
I do.
And can you tell me the location of that pillow, where it would have been prior to the shooting or after the shooting, the movement of that?
Well, during bleeding, it had to be in a different position than what we see it in the photograph. There was blood staining on the pillow that can't get there with the blood in the position that we see it in the photograph. So it had to be in a different position originally. And then it was moved from that position after blood staining got on the pillow and then covered her face.
Okay, and then I believe you identified a comforter as something that was placed over the body as well, is that right?
Correct.
Is that similar, consistent with what we saw at the first location with Christopher and Gary?
It is.
All right. So, and I believe that you had testified that all of those gunshot wounds at that location were to the face or head area, is that right?
The one with the female in bed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to take your attention to, and we'll look for some photographs here of crime scene 2. This would be the residence of Frankie and Hannah Gilly. Do you recall those names?
I do.
While I'm looking for a picture here, do you recall where the shop location or shop placement was of those individuals, Gary or Frankie and Hannah Gilly?
Primarily the face and head.
Okay. And in proximity to the eyes, can you tell me that on both?
The female had a gunshot wound to the eye. The male had a gunshot wound, I believe, just below the eye. I can't recall if it was left or right, but just below the eye.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit B167. Do you recognize that photo?
I do.
And does that contain the shot placement that you just testified to?
It appears that it's below the right eye.
Okay. And while I'm looking for one of Anna Gilly, do you recall the shot placement on her?
It was to the eye, but again, I don't recall. Well, I think that one was to the right eye as well.
Okay, all right. Now, let me take your attention to crime scene 4. And show the picture so you're familiar with the location. I'm going to show you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit D17. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what is that photo of?
This is a residence. It's a fifth wheel trailer. This is where Kenneth Roden's body was located.
Okay. And I'm now going to show you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit D191. Take a look at that photo.
Yes.
And what is that photo of?
This is a photograph of Kenneth Roden in bed. It shows a gunshot wound to the right eye.
Okay.
And
Okay, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to have to pause for discussion. I was trying not to interrupt, but then I got frustrated. This is what I don't understand about what's occurring during this testimony. I understand, I think, what they're attempting to do here, and it's sort of disjointed, obviously, because the state hasn't finished presenting their case, number one, and I think number two, we weren't able to hear a lot of Jake's testimony, right? And I think they're attempting to impeach the state's expert who testified in the OJ trial with respect to the shoes, the Bruno Magli shoes. Cement shoes. Yeah, that was a good one. I'm funny sometimes. But this is where I'm frustrated. The amount of times that this witness has said, I can't recall, is frustrating to me because surely he prepared a report for the defense. So why doesn't the defense attorney ask him, would looking at your report help refresh your memory? They're allowed to do that. They can't read from their report, right? But they're allowed to look at their report in an effort to refresh their memory. And I don't understand why the defense attorney hasn't allowed him to do this, because it's not coming off good. I'm just saying. All right, here we go. Let's see what else he's saying. This is an unfortunate pause, facial expression he's making.
associated bloodstains.
And as far as those injuries, is there any consistency that you determine between
Cement shoes. I have said some doozies. That's for sure.
The location
Yeah.
is certainly consistent. With Kenneth, the muzzle of the firearm is significantly closer
Okay,
than what I saw with the two at the other location, the male and the female.
all right. And where were any similarities between where those individuals were actually shot? In the body or in the face?
To a degree, I mean, to the eye.
Okay, all right. Now, one of the questions that you were asked is whether it could be determined. And I want to focus primarily on 4077. That would be the first crime scene with Chris Sr. and Gary Roden.
Yes.
The question that we had for you is whether or not you could determine, based on the evidence that you had there in front of you or that was provided, the number of perpetrators that would have been at that scene. And what was your response, or what is your opinion in regard to that question?
Well, while I can't eliminate completely multiple offenders, a single individual could have done everything that we see at that scene.
Okay. Now, is there anything about, when you looked at those blood smears that we went through in the floor at 4077, anything about those blood smears on that floor that would indicate, that would provide clues as to whether there was one or more people there at that location?
The biggest thing was the lack of multiple sole impressions, footprints, overlaying each other, movement in multiple directions. That's one. Another one was the fact that you have a very narrow pathway between the living area through the kitchen and into the bedroom where things are not disturbed, they're not moved, turned over, moved at a significant degree, which tells me that limited individuals going through that area.
Okay. And so I'm now going to show you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit A-228. Could you take a look at that and tell us, and that's in regard to the testimony you just provided to us about the spacing. What can you tell me, or what does that?
Okay, now I'm getting it.
Basically, you have a chair, and it has a number of objects on it, a plastic bag, and then some what appears to be a pillow and a box and something else on top of the box that are all kind of stacked in that area in this doorway with a drag trail that comes through it. Really no great disturbance. The plastic bag doesn't have any motion indicators where it's pulled around. The chair doesn't appear to be moved any significant distance. It appears to be consistent with the drag trail in the place that it is. There's just not a lot of indications that, again, it tends to support a single individual coming through.
I'm going to stop you right there, sir, because that in and of itself, sure, I can agree. That would seem to suggest an individual moving through there. However, it's also possible that the chair itself and the objects on top of the chair could have been displaced and then replaced if there were multiple individuals in that home doing multiple things. So that, and I suspect whichever attorney ends up on cross is going to ask that same question, because you know, one of the things that we did hear from Jake, I played you guys that audio, is that he himself went around and collected the casings. Good morning, Melissa. So if he went around collecting the casings, if you're and to be fair, he must have done a pretty good job, because if I'm remembering correctly, and I think that I am, there was a single casing found in the home with Frankie and Hannah Hazel, and there was another casing found. It might have, let me state that back. I think there were a couple in the home with Frankie and Hannah Hazel. And then I remember distinctly there being one casing found in Dana Roden's home, specifically in Hannah Mae's bedroom underneath the crib. So there you have it. It's possible that multiple, this is, I understand where they're going, but I don't think it's going to help, George.
What you're talking about, could you hold that photograph up for me so the viewers can see what you're talking about? In regard to the pathway.
Okay, the pathway is this drag trail right here on the floor, the blood pathway. Here's the chair, plastic bag, pillow, box, and some additional object that are stacked here.
I would find this testimony far more compelling if there were, if they were referencing like furniture that had, say, dust on it, right? Or things that were stacked and there was dust around the items that were stacked and those remained undisturbed. That I would find far more compelling. But just because one person, right, did the dragging and the moving of the bodies doesn't mean there were not multiple people in that home. So this, in my opinion, I'm not swayed at this time. But It's very possible something earth shattering could be coming out right now. So let's continue.
No indications that this has been moved any distance away from the drag trail.
And so if I understand what you're telling me is that whoever or however a body was dragged through there,
All right. It is a leading question. It sounds like it started out that way, so I was just thinking.
all right. Let's see that photograph. Remember when we talked, well, you had looked at some previous photographs and the placement of furniture and a rug, and you were able to determine, do you recall how you determined whether or not those objects were placed before or after the blood smear?
Well, yes.
Okay? And how were you able to determine whether they were placed there before or after that blood smear was placed there?
Well, the blood smear would have had to have been created first before the object got moved on top of it.
Okay?
And that's with the chair. With the rug, the appearance is that the drag trail pre-existed the rug placement. Not having a photograph of that rug being moved, I can't exclude other possibilities, but it appears that the rug was placed there after the drag trail was created.
Okay. So keeping that in mind, can you tell me on A228, there appears to be a chair there, whether that chair was there at the time that blood smear went through?
And looking at the chair leg and associated with the chair, there appears to be in this photograph some swiping material on the chair leg, which would certainly support that it was in this position when the blood source came through.
Okay, and do you see any blood underneath the chair leg?
No.
All right, and so the absence of blood underneath the chair leg and then blood along the side of the chair leg would allow you to find what about the location of that chair as the body was put through there.
Well, certainly and again, we're talking about the body, and that's consistent with the location of the bodies in the bedroom, but it's a volume blood source that's being dragged through here, certainly consistent with the body.
All right, thank you. And so I started asking about these questions because the question dealt with if you could determine the number of perpetrators or people in that scene. And in regard to the spatial area, what does this tell?
Well, again, there's limited spacing there, and it would be very difficult, well, it would be impossible to go through that location with two people side by side dragging an individual. You need to follow an inline motion, so somebody would have to be, the indications with the bodies are that they were dragged by the feet. The individual would have to be, a single individual would have to hold on to the feet and drag them through there.
I'm going to show you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit A169. And can you describe that photo?
And again, this is the living room area showing the volume blood staining on the floor with the rug, the loop stain.
Okay. With the volume of blood there.
Hey,
would you have
Allie,
an
good to see ya.
expectation? Could you arrive at an opinion regarding the number of people that would be in that living?
Based on this photograph alone?
Yeah,
Well, no, but there are things that I would expect to see
such as.
if there were multiple people, and that would be additional footprints, overlaid footprints, a lot of activity back and forth type of thing, given the nature of the blood stains that are on the floor.
Okay, all right.
And knowing that at least a shoe contacted a wet blood source.
Right. And when you say overlay of impressions with prints, what do you mean by that?
Basically, what we're creating is what's called a pattern transfer. Is you have shoe sole that contacts a wet surface. Imagine an old hand stamp, and I know that some of us probably don't even remember what the heck I'm talking about with a hand stamp, where it contacts ink and then it makes repeated impressions, pattern impressions. A shoe works basically the same way. It contacts this wet blood source, and then as it contacts non-bloody surfaces, it begins to leave repetitive pattern transfers on those areas that diminish over time because the blood is drying and the blood is worn away. And you have several prints that are left behind as it goes along. Overlays is when that same or similar objects are creating these patterns. They tend to go on top of something that pre-exists in there as well. I'm not seeing any of that here.
And speaking of prints, can you tell me the direction, or if there's a direction that can be indicated? Well, first off, can you tell me whether any prints were found in the blood there in that room, or in the living room, kitchen area, 4077?
There were.
All right. And were those prints in different directions? In other words, was the toe of those prints say in different directions, or did they indicate a common direction of travel?
The prints that I saw indicated direction of travel from the bedroom out to the living room.
Okay, all right. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to State's Exhibit D25. Take a look at that photograph for me and tell me if you recognize that.
The photograph,
Okay, and what is that photograph of?
again, it's a photograph of the fifth wheel residence for Kenneth Roden, and it shows a blue Dodge pickup truck that's parked near the fifth wheel.
Okay, all right, let's see that picture. All right, and so, you have reviewed the statement of Jake Wagner, is that right?
Yes.
All right, and do you recall his explanation of how Kenneth was killed in that video camp?
Murder. He objects to this.
And now they're going to have a little meeting at the judge's bench. I'm having a very difficult time finding this testimony to be really compelling, only because I know what they're attempting to do, right? And they have to do this. They have got to get an expert up there to say, hey, look, man, there's no way all of these people were in this house doing all of these things. There just simply like wasn't enough room. I get it, but I just I don't think that can be said. I just don't.
So you're going to withdraw that question and ask another one?
I will, Your Honor. Go for that photograph. Okay, D25.
There you go. Thank you, Law and Crime.
I have a question for you.
I like surround sound, not just one
Hypothetical. If it's
side.
dark
It messes
outside,
with me and I don't like
and
it.
you are positioned behind that blue Dodge, would you be able to see a gun flash inside of that video camera?
In my experience, I wouldn't say so.
Okay. Now, with the presence of-
Okay. I'm going to pause right here. So I know what they're talking about only because of the diligence of the media in reporting Jake's testimony. So this specific part, this has to do with Jake's testimony about what he saw with respect to from the outside, because he says he did not go into Kenneth Roden's house. So he's testifying to what he saw from looking from the outside in. Okay. And so basically, Jake said that he saw the muzzle flash. Okay. And this witness is saying he doesn't think that he would have been able to see that. So there we go.
In my experience, I would not say so.
Now, would the existence of a light source inside of that fifth wheel camper make it more, less likely, or have no effect at all on observing a gun flash from the outside?
Well, any addition of light to that location would mute any particular created flash if one actually occurred.
Okay. And we have, well, do you recall specifically being asked about gun flash and about how much flash there is with a gunshot? Do you recall that?
I do.
All right. And did you conduct an experiment or demonstration of the amount of flash?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you a recording if you could. Please describe this.
Ooh, they're going to do a reenactment. Now, you know I love a reenactment, y'all. Especially when it comes to the science stuff, because it's good to see, like put a visual with it. So I'm quite, I'm anticipating this.
Now, while we're waiting on this video to play, is this a video that you created?
It is. There are several, but yes.
Okay. Can you tell me the type of ammunition and firearm that you used?
The firearm was a Glock 40 caliber pistol.
Okay.
The ammunition was Hornady critical duty ammunition.
Okay. So, you want to press play? Yeah, go ahead. If you could, look over your shoulder. Oh, you got it there. Now, the gun that we just saw in that video is what type of gun again?
That's a 40 caliber Glock.
And the ammunition is?
Hornady critical duty.
Okay. And the demonstration, the point of this video.
I'm sorry it's rough for you, Allie, but I'm glad you're doing a little better.
See if we could visualize a flash from the muzzle of the fire.
Okay. Do you recall the time of day that video was taken? The approximate
It was
morning?
just after sundown. It was about 7-ish in the evening.
Okay. Did you make more than one video?
Several, yes.
All right, so I'm going to play the next one for you. And could you tell me what is the difference between this video now that we're looking at and the first?
The first one was taken right at dusk, where the sun had just cleared the horizon. Now it's just getting darker and darker at this same location.
Okay. Now, did you notice a flash in that video?
I do.
All right. And was this the same type gun and ammunition used in the first?
Everything's the same.
All right. If we could, let's go to. Actually, go to the very last one.
Full last one. So let's make a record of that. It's going to be 559-A8936.
All right. If you could watch the video that's there in front of you now. On this video, can you see it? There's an object that's on the monitor now. Can you tell me what that is?
It's my phone, and it just shows various time zones from different areas of the country, including Denver, which is the area where I did this.
Okay. Could you pause that just 1 second? Do you need me to rewind that, or can you tell me what time it was at the time that this video here was made?
It was after 8 in the evening. I don't, I would have seen it on the phone, but I didn't look that
Okay.
close.
Well, let me make a record of the first two that we played. The first video was digital video 559A8930. The second one was 559A8930.
Now, we're replaying, this is gonna be the last video. Do you see the time?
It's 8:30 PM in Denver,
Okay, all right,
which would be 10:30 here.
okay. Now, did you observe flash in that video?
I did.
All right, so, in the hypothetical that I gave you, if you were referring to State Exhibit D225, if you're in the night hours, such on the video that we just played, behind that blue Dodge, what is the likelihood that you would see a flash from a gun discharge inside that trailer?
Not likely at all.
Okay. And would that matter if the door was, the front door here is open or closed?
No.
And did you notice, I'll show you what has been marked State's Exhibit 213, D213, if you could take a look at that. And is that, could you describe what that is in that photo?
It's a window with Venetian blinds pulled over the top. It looks like the blue pickup truck that we saw in the previous photograph is in the background looking out of the window when the blinds are spread open.
All right, and so now I'm going to show you what's been labeled as State's Exhibit D215. Tell me if you recognize those blinds.
I do.
And so those blinds are over a window, right?
There.
All right. And in relation to the body, where are they?
They're basically at the foot of the body or off. Well, they would be to the left side of the body.
Okay, all right. But those blinds appear to be open or closed?
Closed.
All right. And how would that affect your ability to see gun flash from within that fifth wheel camera?
Well, it would
Oh, I see.
baffle it even further. I mean,
I
like
guess
I said, it'd be.
I misunderstood the point
I
of
wouldn't
this.
think you could see the flash
part
from
of the
outside anyway,
testimony.
based on my experience. The blinds mute that even further.
Okay, all right.
And in addition, when you look at this photograph, there's a light that is on in this area, which is going to provide additional ambient lighting, which is even going to further mute any flash that man may create.
So based on your training and experience, the likelihood of seeing a gun flash from outside of that fifth wheel camper is?
I wouldn't think you're going to see one, again, based on my experience.
All right. In regard to, and this is going to be comparison with the other scenes, is there anything about the injuries or anything about the bodies that tell you that this is a common gun man or a common person shooting each person?
Well, the fact that.
I don't
with the
understand that
exception of
question
the
at all.
First scene where two different calibers are used, the caliber of firearm that is used in the other scenes is relatively monogamous, the same. You have 22 calibers used at the middle two scenes, and you have a 40 caliber used at the last scene.
Okay. All right. Anything about the location of gunshot wounds or anything about the bodies and how they're positioned or placed that would give you any indication how many perpetrators?
Again, with the first scene, you have individuals that were dragged into a bedroom, were likely up and aware when the shootings occurred. All the other scenes, the individuals who were shot are in bed. Little to any movement associated with those individuals. One individual easily could have done all those shots.
All right. Now, all of these opinions that you've given here today, are they based on excuse me, to a degree of reliable scientific certainty?
I'd say reasonable technical certainty.
Okay. All right. Hold on one second. Sure. Well, I had handed you a copy of your report. Could you take a look at that? And I think it's going to be near the end. Could you look at the conclusions that you arrived to regarding on the question dealing with the number of perpetrators?
Okay.
Is that consistent with the testimony you provided here?
Yes.
And is this report is final analysis?
Well, it's a draft. I mean, this particular document likely has some grammar and typo issues. But
Have you
yes,
prepared another report after?
this is the only report I've prepared in relation to this case.
All right, thank you. Further questions?
Thank you. Statement cross-examined.
Yeah, the only issue that I have is gonna take me probably about 10 minutes. It's gonna take me a few minutes to reset. I gotta move all of that stuff. I gotta move the exhibits that I'm gonna rescan.
Oh, bless
I don't know
it.
if we want to keep the jury seated here while I do that. I'd probably prefer to take a little bit of break instead of having to sit here.
It's 10 after 10, so 15-minute break, would make it 25 after. We'll take a 15-minute break, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. While you're on break, do not discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Do not permit this case to be discussed with you or in your presence. Do not
All right.
express an opinion concerning the case.
And with that, I think we're going to adjourn our coverage for today. I really, 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 really have got to work on this video so that I can have it done by Saturday. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and end the live for now. And then we'll pick up where we left off tonight. Okay. But more importantly, we're also going to be going over the audio from yesterday, from their afternoon session. So that we can, because I want you guys to hear that and I want to discuss that. And also the lights are starting to flicker and stuff. And I think we're almost through, but I feel like I can tell that it's a possibility that the electricity is going to go off. And so I don't want us to, have just like an abrupt stop like would be annoying to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and end this. And that way, just in case we lose power, at least my stuff is charged. But anyway, I'll see you guys tonight, hopefully, fingers crossed. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Thursday, and I will see you all hopefully tonight. All right, you take care. Bye.